Hello. Hello everyone, Crypto 365 is live, and today we have a crypto update from one and only Cliff High. Let's see what kind of tokens or cryptocurrencies Cliff favors for 2018. Crypto number 1, Bitcoin, and Cliff answers to the following question: what happens after Bitcoin's mining is over and there is no more Bitcoin to be mined?
Well, we'll still have dozens of transactions, and now we have things like Rootstock, in which there will be smart contracts running on the Bitcoin network. So there will still be an incentive for miners to mine, because they'll still be making money, because people will still pay fees to want to run their smart contracts and do their Bitcoin transactions. And at that point, Bitcoin goes into the category of a really solid digital asset of a known quantity. And then you have the total scarcity factor that pops in.
So in 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto launched Bitcoin as the world's first cryptocurrency. The code is open source, which means it can be modified by anyone and freely used for other projects. So 2 years later, 2011, and Litecoin was announced. Crypto number 2 is Litecoin.
Okay, so Litecoin is showing in the data sets is going to a 1-to-4 ratio with, it's actually 1.5 or 1 to 5 something with Bitcoin, and becoming a very favored, and it's shown that in the data sets for some time, being a very favored point of sale in use kind of a coin. And so this is just, perfect with our data forecast is this latest news about Amazon considering using Litecoin for payments.
I was sure this was a fake news, but many people have jumped on and started to ask Amazon support about this. And it looks like it's really coming. Early this week we found out that Burger King Russia was going to add Bitcoin and Litecoin support line. And now Amazon. And guess what? If this is in Cliff High's data, I feel it's coming.
So in that sense, it's fulfillment of the forecast we've had for some time, and it will drive Litecoin up relative to the Bitcoin price. Litecoin, everybody needs to understand, is basically a clone of Bitcoin, in which they've just done certain things to it. But basically it's the same code base from which the Bitcoin exists. And so it's rock solid that way, and it's just a little faster because of the way that they decided to take it. And then there's a team behind it that sells the whole protocol there.
And here it comes, crypto number 3, and it's the Pillar.
Pillar, I don't have a dollar amount projection on, but I know that Pillar is going to be at a point where it's going to be the primary wallet to compete against. Okay, so if you're in the wallet business, Pillar is showing in our data sets as bringing out a lot of features that are going to make it hyper attractive to people as the early adopters start coming on in. So many of these people will experience cryptocurrencies for the first time through the Pillar wallet. And this will really start taking off March, April, May, and go whoosh with all of the activity from May onward.
Pillar coin is a meta token. What I really believe is that our upcoming business models for many projects that we use on daily basis will be provided by this token, Pillar. And here I give you an example. Let's say I go to a doctor, and the doctor does some tests and gives me a prescription for a few pills. All data from this visit and the recipe will be copied to my Pillar wallet. Then I can manage the prescription as I like, including searching for offers from pharmacies and of course paying attention to the lowest price and fastest delivery. Personal data is becoming increasingly important and difficult to manage. We're losing nearly 500 billion a year against cyber criminals. Hopefully, Pillar project will fix it. And here comes coin number 4, and it's Populous.
Now let's see, Populous is going to be a strategic hold. It's going to be a passive income kind of a generating thing. And so in a sense, years from now, people will look at Populous the way that, like we've had the phrase trust fund kids, whose parents are so rich and they leave a trust fund. This will be the kind of thing that Populous will engender. A bunch of kids that will be an annoyance 10 or 15 years out from now because their parents got so rich on this stuff.
Wait a minute. What about coin number 6? Ethereum.
Ethereum is going to be a major competitor to Bitcoin, but it's going to get up and down because of the niche that it's in. It's competing against EOS, or will be soon competing against what everybody's going to be calling the Ethereum killer, which is EOS network. But it's also now going to start competing against rootstock off of Bitcoin, because you'll be able to run smart contracts on the Bitcoin blockchain. And so Ethereum is going to have more competition. It'll have to get its act a little bit tighter, get the network a little bit better. It'll continue to gain value as we go forward. A lot of these things are going to be gaining value on the theory that a tide lifts all boats, right? And so they'll be rising proportionately, but not necessarily extra proportionally the way Populous or Pillar might, because of their individual situations.
Well, thank you, Cliff. But what about the small cap tokens?
Popular. Yeah, I can go into a couple smaller capitalization coins. Mm-hmm. We have to be careful though, because some of these things I like just because I like the code. It's well expressed. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have a big market adoption, right? But we could say that in general, those coins that are related to the interaction of the cryptocurrency world with the fast food world, the McDonald's world, the bread and butter world, where you can swipe your card. Okay, so if you're looking at payment systems that allow you to spend your cryptocurrencies on real world stuff are going to be a real solid investment. They're going to be that would be like owning AT&T stock in the 1950s. Okay, because AT&T was a transport layer for this new burgeoning world of commerce that was conducted over the telephone. Most people don't understand it, but prior to the early 1950s, commerce for telephones was actually relatively rare. And it was the introduction of the national grid in a particular way that led to the idea of even being able to do any business on the telephone. And then ultimately look where we're at today. And so imagine that the payment layers are going to be like AT&T of the 1950s. And so that would include like 10X, Centra, and a few of these others that have cards and have mechanisms for spending them. Some of the other coins that are I like because of their code base and or because of their use case, and I'll mention two of them, and they both show up in the data sets, albeit at small amounts of chatter, so I can't be reliable about what is actually being forecast. But these are Monero and Cloak. Okay, and so Monero and Cloak have a special use case because they're much more private coins than is on available through Ether coins or blockchain or Bitcoin blockchain. In that sense, if I put my address out on a saying I accept Bitcoin donations or whatever, then you can actually look at that address, go to blockchain.info and see what has been sent to it. And if you knew it was associated with me, then you would be able to say, aha, this stuff was sent to Cliff. Monero and Cloak have these obscuring layers that remove that ability. So it's truly a lot more anonymous. Now that's both good and bad. It allows those kind of coins, should they have a volume or capitalization, to be used in illegal activities. I suggest that that's not very likely, because real money laundering and this kind of stuff is done in billions of dollars at the level of banks, and no cryptocurrency is large enough to accept any kind of money laundering at this stage, including Bitcoin. You couldn't stash enough. You couldn't move the drug money through Bitcoin to launder it. It would make Bitcoin go to $1.5 million per Bitcoin right away, just because of the trillions of dollars of drug money on the planet.
Well, I'm honestly not that impressed. Those two coins, Monero and Clock coin, were already mentioned while Cliff had the interview with Greg Hunter a year ago. But I really believe Monero will skyrocket whenever privacy issues arise with Bitcoin.
The blockchains, all of them, this whole shift is making it very difficult for all of the illegal activity that bled us over the course of all of my 60 plus years on this planet and all of your lives. You've been, every productive act you've had has had some level of it siphoned off to support what we now know is this giant deep state of secrecy that we don't know what the hell they're doing with this money, but we've got some idea, and there may be, you know, space aliens involved, that kind of thing, right? And the blockchain removes all of the obscuring that can occur in the spread of corruption, because you just can't really corrupt a node on a blockchain. You can go bribe a banker, keep quiet about what you're doing, right? Threaten them and so on. But it's awful hard to do that with somebody's wallet. So this kind of stuff really shows in the blockchain, and it's going to eliminate a lot of the corruption layers, which of course makes our society, our species, so much more able to survive. Because instead of the corruption on top of all the middlemen, and both are going to go away with the blockchain, because it does away with a lot of the middle level of activities that don't really add value. They just siphon off some of the profits, so to speak, right? And it's going to be great. You know, we're going to see increasing spread of the value, the benefits of this as we go forward over these next couple of years. We're even now seeing the new companies bring out products, Veritasium, Populous, Pillar, and all these kind of things. So people saying, oh, you know, cryptocurrencies are you know, beanie babies or tulip bubbles and that kind of stuff. It's like, well, no, not really, because this stuff does things, and it does things hyper efficiently in a transparent way that we're all going to want to be behind. And there's this rule out there. I want to say that the guy's name is Metcalf. He invented this rule, and it's basically a business or a technology rule, and it has to do with what Jenny was talking about earlier, which is basically attention market. Okay, that's what they're calling them in cryptocurrencies. That all of us together, all of our consciousness, the hearts and minds, we're an attention market, and within that attention market, some things are going to win and other things are not. The attention market itself is valuable to know about, but the manipulation, or not the success of the attention market is itself a compounding and combining kind of a process. And this guy Metcalf says, within the attention market, the more eyeballs you draw to a product, the more valuable that product is. The more valuable a product is, the more eyeballs it draws. So it's a kind of a positive feedback loop thought of within relation to how humans are in their focus and energy and things. So, and we know this is true. You can demonstrate it in small groups, you can demonstrate it in large groups. The more eyeballs that use Google, the more valuable Google becomes, the less valuable the other search engines become. So as we go forward, blockchain sucking in all this attention, getting more attention, it's building, it's compounding, there's more and more conferences, more people are finding out about it. All of it becomes more valuable simply because we're putting our attention on it.
Half-past human report is picking up. Every time that I have actually picked up one of your WebBot reports, there has been multiple, it's picked up on multiple things. I mean, every single time. There hasn't been one time that I haven't read a report that picked up on multiple things. So I think that's really cool.
It's kind of interesting. We've got all kinds of changes. We're in a very interesting period of time for my work. A lot of it is based on a lot of my work is based on volume of language around particular contexts and how we get at it. And ever since probably June of last year, the level of the volume in the language and the level of emotional intensity is way up. And so it's the emotional intensity that drives the prescient component of our stuff. So it's been a sort of a rich harvest for us because everybody's all whipped up. One of the reasons that I think everybody's all whipped up is this energy, unknown energy from space business. And we've been getting the idea of From 1997, when I first did the very first run here. Got back, I think maybe 9 million data items in that very first one. It's not uncommon for me now for the servers to process through, 200 and 300 million now, because we have social media primarily. There weren't that many sources back in the late 90s, but even back then, one of the first things that I got in the very first run that shocked me was the conjunction of the word sun and disease. And the disease was not fully formed in the lexicon. So I knew that it was a substitution, because I'd rigged this part of my code where if I ran into too many unknowns, it would take a word of the same emotional context and the same emotional duration and the same emotional intensity, get those 3 words, or 1 word, could be 1 word, it could also be different, 3, and then go to the lexicon and retrieve those and bring it back. And that was just my way of saying in the code, okay, you've got this far, don't fail, or fail gracefully and go get a substitute and then tell me we've done a substitute. And so I kept getting sun disease over the years. And well, we're there now relative to how humans think about the sun. We've been, in the Western world, we've been heaped with bullshit these past 20 plus years about global warming for people's personal gain and for who knows what other weird reasons. And now we're going to get to a level of reality where we start understanding what's going on with our weather and how it relates directly to the sun, and how the sun is not what we've been told. So, for instance, you'll find a lot of people that think that such things as a Dyson sphere can exist. And in fact, you'll get some people that will just be outraged by what I'm about to say, but because they think they've actually discovered an alien social order some distance away, and the weird pattern of light we're getting from it, according to even people at NASA, must be this civilization constructing a Dyson sphere around their sun. The idea of a Dyson sphere is that we took all of the material of all of the planets in our solar system and we flatten them all out into a big thin sheet metal. We could make a giant ball with the sun in the middle, and that would give us far more room to live in on the inside of that sphere than exists on all the planets around here now. So if we had filled up all the planets with people, this would be a way to flatten out all the planets, and we'd all hang around in space presumably while this is happening, and they'd flatten out all the planets and surround our sun, and then we wouldn't lose any solar energy. It would all be 100% trapped, and we could use it, and life would be good, birds would sing, and so on.
Awesome.
Well, that's the idea of a Dyson sphere, okay? That was promulgated by this guy Dyson, who was a physicist, and he was brilliant. He won all kinds of awards, and his kid went on to develop Badarkas up here in the Northwest, which are a form of a soft kayak that I actually use. Really cool kayaks that's paint on canvas, and I like his kid, but the Dyson, the physicist, was 100% wrong, because see, here's the problem. That presumes it has one fatal flaw, one instantly a visible fatal flaw if you're aware of what's going on, and that presumes that the sun is a nuclear-powered something, that it is self-energizing, that it makes its own energy and will do so until all of its matter has been consumed. Many people in the scientific community actually think the sun is a giant ball of hydrogen that, because of gravity, compressed itself to where it caught on fire at a nuclear level, and we've all been toasting marshmallows to that ever since. and that's not the case. The sun is not nuclear. Any social order that could build a Dyson sphere would not, simply because they would recognize as
Hey, what's up guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. Just a quick video here to discuss a major discovery of what they are calling a Maya megalopolis that was discovered after laser scans revealed this unknown megacity underneath and below the Guatemalan jungle. And as you're seeing here in the before and after photos, showing the scan here of what they are calling a vast interconnected network of ancient cities that were home to millions more people than previously thought. And they did this using laser technology known as LiDAR, which digitally removes the forest canopy to reveal ancient ruins below, showing that Maya cities such as Tikal were much larger than the ground-based research had suggested. And so according to this new report from National Geographic, in what is being hailed as a major breakthrough in Maya archaeology, researchers have identified the ruins of more than 60,000 houses, palaces, elevated highways, and other human-made features that have been hidden for centuries under the jungles of northern Guatemala. 60,000 previously unknown Maya structures, a vast network, cities, fortifications, farms, highways. It's just amazing. And so, using this revolutionary technology, this LiDAR, which is short for light detection and ranging, scholars have digitally removed the tree canopy from aerial images of the now unpopulated landscape, revealing the ruins of a sprawling pre-Columbian civilization that was far more complex and interconnected than most Maya specialists had supposed. Thomas Garrison, an Ithaca College archaeologist and National Geographic explorer, said, quote, "The LiDAR images make it clear that this entire region was a settlement system whose scale and population density had been grossly underestimated." And so they didn't even know this stuff was here. And they were using this aerial LiDAR sensing equipment where they targeted 10 parcels of land within Guatemala's Maya Biosphere Reserve, where the discoveries were revealed after they had mapped more than 800 square miles of just vast forest where you would have never known anything was underneath. And after this amazing discovery, I mean, imagine you discovered this, just scanning some random unpopulated forest anywhere in the world, and you come up with this metropolis, this megatropolis, which in this case they are saying that the ancient civilization was at its peak some 1,200 years ago and was more comparable to sophisticated cultures such as ancient Greece or China than to the scattered or sparsely populated city-states that ground-based research had long suggested. And in addition to a lot of these unknown structures, the LiDAR images also showed these massive, long, raised, interconnected highways that were connecting these urban centers and quarries, complex irrigation and terracing, which supported intensive agriculture capable of feeding masses of workers who dramatically reshaped the landscape. It is said that the ancient Maya never used the wheel or had beasts of burden, and yet this was a civilization that was literally moving mountains. And so this finding here would seem to contradict the long-held stance, Western stance, that complex civilizations can't flourish in the tropics, and that in fact the tropics are where civilizations would go to die. And so now the big question is, was it these complex societies that actually formed in the tropics and that then made their way later outward from there to the western areas? You guys tell me what you think down below, but this, again, an amazing discovery, along with UFOs and aliens and strange things happening around space. Ancient history right here on Earth has always fascinated me. The history of our planet, how we came into being, and not only that, how many times have we done it over and over? How many times have there been some massive cataclysms and that we have basically reset, clawing our way back out from the primordial ooze and rebuilding civilizations that had already been built and possibly surpassed where we are at right now countless times before being set back again? Because we've talked in past videos where they have made these discoveries of things that look like little watches that are millions of years old, pieces of pottery and machinery that predate the dinosaurs, when supposedly man did not even exist for millions of years later. And yet we continue to find these ancient artifacts, whether it be in pieces of coal millions of years old, deep down in the rocks. it's an amazing topic. Really, really cool. So be sure to check out the article down below. I will put it in the video description. And real quick, also, before we go today, talking about strange things around Earth, we have a new map of an area of Antarctica that would seem to show another possible location of one of these secret underground bases. And so the image you're seeing here was actually emailed to me about a week ago. However, I'm just now getting to it. But if you guys remember, I posted a video about this global heat map that was released by this company who basically took images around the globe of people who had been wearing those workout watches. They're called Fitbits. And a lot of people wear them when they work out. It monitors your heart rate and things of that nature, but it also tracks where you go, all of your movements. And so these maps came out where it not only showed the movements of just joggers and regular people, but it also, unbeknownst to the powers that be, inadvertently gave out the location of some secret unknown bases around the world that no one knew even existed if it weren't for the heat signatures that created outlines on the outside of these buildings by the military personnel who were walking around it and basically on guard, who were wearing these Fitbit watches. And so, if you haven't seen that video, obviously go and check it out, but we have a new area of Antarctica here that was discovered where basically in the middle of nowhere, we have one of these heat maps here, where we can obviously see the outline around what looks like a building, a multi-level building, which obviously people who are wearing these tracking devices, likely government employees, have been walking around every single day. And so here we are on Google Earth at the exact same area, and there's nothing there. And there was actually another channel that goes by the name of Mr. MBB333. He puts out great videos. He recently spoke about this, and what he pointed out was that actually near where this heat map was discovered, there was this strange formation in the ice that looked like this elongated, man-made structure that had this sort of circular, round object at the end of it, and that he didn't really know what it was. Well, actually, this is a man-made runway, which is located at something called the Union Glacier. And that's what this area is, and that's where this heat map was found. Now, Union Glacier is obviously just the name of a natural formation in the ice, but that is also the location of a camp where they sometimes do these expeditions. And so this blue ice runway, which is, by the way, miles away from where this heat map was discovered, was constructed mainly for Russian aircraft to regularly land with equipment and personnel to this camp. And so here I am showing you guys where this runway and where this camp is compared to where this heat signature is. And as you're seeing here, after measuring, they're about 7.2 miles apart, with the runway and camp being on the other side of this mountain range. And the actual area where we're getting this heat signature is on the other side of the mountains, down here in this basically no man's land, virtual flat area of snow and ice. And yeah, there's just nothing there. So that leads me to believe that whatever we're seeing in this heat map here is definitely underground. And you can see some of the lines here are overlapping, which signifies to me that there are definitely multiple levels going underground, and that's what we're seeing here. So, very interesting finding. And while there are many publicly known camps or bases or stations, research stations, scattered around the continent, I firmly believe that there's more of a mystery there. There are things underground that we are not being told about, and really just a litany of anomalous activity happening. So, big thanks to the viewer who pointed this out. I'm going to be doing more research into this global heat map to see what else we can find before it's likely erased. And yeah, you guys stay tuned. Thank you all for checking out today's video. Subscribe, and I will see you all back in just a bit.
1989, a man called Bob Lazar walked into a Las Vegas TV station and gave a remarkable interview. He said that he'd worked out in the Nevada desert at a top-secret facility known as Area 51. He said he worked on a highly classified project, reverse engineering recovered alien spacecraft. His story was a worldwide sensation, and Area 51 became a household name, synonymous with UFOs, secret projects, and little green men. And yet, neither the US government nor its military have ever denied his claims, and they still don't officially confirm that Area 51 exists, despite satellite photos proving it does. Many dismiss Bob Lazar as a fantasist, and yet others see him as a whistleblower, exposing a government cover-up of UFOs and alien contact.
A once-secret airbase in the Nevada desert is marking an unofficial anniversary today.
Area 51 was one of the most secretive places on the planet, but that anonymity vanished forever because of what happened 25 years ago. A controversial electronics whiz told a fantastic tale during a TV interview, and the story still reverberates today.
The I-Team's George Knapp played a part in what became an international sensation. He's here with an update.
Setting the stage, Dave, you might not know this, but 25 years ago, a young anchorwoman named Paula Francis and I were prepping for the 5 o'clock news when we learned that our scheduled live interview had canceled. We placed a call to aviator John Lear to ask if he could get a friend of his to fill the spot, a guy who reportedly worked out near Area 51 and had seen flying saucers out there. It sounded outrageous at the time, but that interview with Bob Lazar turned Area 51 upside down. We coaxed a reluctant Lazar into returning to Las Vegas to
We could talk about the beaches of sunny Tampa, Florida, and the great time you'll have here.
talk about it.
I don't know. Sometimes I really do regret it, and I almost feel like apologizing to him, saying that, you know, I'm sorry I let things out. Can I have my job back?
My personal opinion, based on comments I've gotten from the Deputy Director for Science and Technology at CIA, would seem to indicate that Bob was perhaps an unwitting participant in a program designed to introduce someone with a technical background to some elements of the UFO research projects going on out at the test site.
I have no doubts that Lazar actually was in a place where top secret investigations were going on. I'm not sure about all the details that have emerged from his account, but he certainly gives me the impression that he was actually there.
Do I believe Bob Lazar? My answer to that is yes. And heck, it's going on 8 years that I've known him. His story has never changed. He wasn't in it for the publicity. He surely wasn't in it for the money. He lost everything he had. I believe he's totally sincere.
As far as I can tell, he's a bright guy who tells a great tale and who's told it often to people who have not checked on him, who accept the notion that, well, the government wiped his slate clean.
Basically, I think he had an experience. I think he saw some things that shocked him, was subject to some conditions and experiences that were very unnerving to him and very profound.
He said, you would love to see what's out there because it's like beyond science fiction. He said, and I wish I could talk to you about it, but I can't. And that's as close as he ever got to telling me anything that happened out there.
You'll find many people who have seen these discs. Question is, where do they come from? Bob Lazar may be one of the few people who can tell us that they're from somewhere else.
I've no doubt that there's a relatively small number of people within the intelligence, military intelligence and scientific and technical intelligence community who are aware of what's going on, and an even smaller group who are actually organizing top secret research into this phenomenon.
There's been an operating airbase out at the location known as Area 51 since the 1950s, when it was home to the CIA's top secret SR-71 Blackbird spy plane. Then in the 1970s, it became the test flight center for the F-117 stealth fighter and the B-2 stealth bomber.
It's fairly public knowledge that we have a super secret facility in the mountains in northern Nevada, referred to as Groom Lake, Area 51 of the Nellis Air Force Base test range. It's also been referred to as Dreamland. This is an area that has been known but officially denied for many decades. All of our super secret aircraft have been developed and test flown out in this particular area. So it only makes sense that if you have something as sophisticated as a flying saucer and the related technology to that, that would certainly be one of the prime locations you'd want to go.
What you see is an ordinary looking Air Force base. It's nothing to write home about, but because the government won't talk about it, everyone wants to see it. The military has never said there are no UFOs. It's never directly denied any of the Area 51 stories. It would have been so simple when these claims came out, these Papoose Lake claims, for the military to simply say, look, we have nothing there. They could take a few reporters to this area and show them. Nothing there. The military hasn't done it. The military has stonewalled. It has remained silent. And that's the most damning thing that they can do.
Area 51 to this day is not acknowledged. That is to say, the Air Force does not admit that it exists. This status has been maintained very carefully, particularly in the last few years. The puzzle is that the base has clearly been very active for quite a while, and you can see that there are about 700 to 1,000 people traveling from Las Vegas every day. So essentially the bulk of what has gone on there in the last 10 years has not emerged from the black.
This airplane was, the program was terminated. The airplanes were put in mothballs for 20 years before they admitted the existence of the aircraft. There's programs that they're working on today that are 50 years ahead of anything that you and I can even conceive of, and that we may never, may never see the light of day.
Would you say it's America's most top secret military base?
As far as an operational test facility, it's probably the most secret test facility in the free world, yes.
So there is no question that the facility is there, that the government has said very little in the past about it. Now, the real question, I suppose, is, are there any flying saucers out there?
No one had associated flying saucers with Area 51 until Bob Lazar's interview hit television screens around the world. He said that he worked at an underground facility called S4. The top secret project was codenamed Galileo.
They would call it a specific time. For instance, the operator would say, Mr. Lazar, it's now 4:15 a.m. We expect you to be at McCarran Airport at 4:45. Your plane will be leaving at such and such time. I'd drive there, check in, board the plane, and the plane would fly out to Groom Lake. It would land there. I'd get off the plane and wait, and there would be a bus to take me and whoever else is going to S4, Papoose Lake, which is about 15 miles south of there, and then I would check in at S4.
Tell me about how you felt on your very first trip out.
The first trip out there, it was actually very exciting because it seemed so cloak and dagger to me, especially after I got in the bus with the blacked out windows. I kind of thought that was neat. Drove out to the site, and then it was checked in, guards walking around with guns, and I was sure what I was working on was going to be pretty fascinating.
He says that within a few days of working out at S4, he was shown an actual flying disc in one of the hangars.
When I was brought in by bus, and for the first time, one of the hangar doors, the one on the end, was open. The bus drove up and we stopped there, and clear as day in the hangar, taking up almost all the hangar, was the disc. Looked like something right out of a science fiction movie. And as I walked in there, I thought, well, this is the new advanced aircraft we've been working on, and this is why people keep seeing flying saucers, because it's ours and we've just been testing it probably for all these years.
And what color and size was it?
It was a dull stainless steel, pewter gray, very unimpressive color-wise. About 52.8 feet in diameter and about 16 feet high.
So was it actually a recovered craft that you were working on, or was it one that scientists had built as a mock-up of a recovered craft?
Well, whether it was recovered, given, or what, it was not built as a mock-up. It was an alien craft built on another world. There was absolutely no doubt about that.
Lazar claims that he was one of only 22 people who had something called majestic clearance to work on the craft itself.
The whole aim of the project was to take these craft, or the one in particular that I was working on, and try and duplicate its systems and subsystems with earthly materials. The work that I did basically entailed back engineering the power and propulsion system, and I opted to start with the power, the reactor that ran the craft.
I knew immediately if his credentials could be verified, if even part of his story could be verified, it'd be one tremendous expose.
George Knapp was a long-standing TV reporter. He'd heard enough of the UFO rumors over the years to appreciate how big a scoop this could be if Lazar was telling the truth.
He gave me information about his background, educational background and employment background. I started with his claim to have worked at Los Alamos Lab. We went to Los Alamos and got nothing even close to cooperation. They wouldn't respond to our phone calls. They say, we have no information on Bob Lazar. There's nothing in the files. I said, are you sure now? No, nothing in the files. I showed them the phone book entry that Bob had kept that said he was there. I showed him the newspaper article that showed that he was there. Basically, Los Alamos Lab tried to thwart me at every step. were completely uncooperative in trying to get information about Bob, and I found that to be the case at every step of the way in trying to verify his background.
Thursday, 12:37 p.m.
Former NASA mission specialist Bob Exler had heard about Area 51 and Groom Lake when he worked on the Apollo and Space Shuttle projects. He was intrigued by Lazar's claims and started to investigate.
I did a variety of research relative to Bob Lazar. I actually met him. I obtained a copy of his what they call a W-2 form, which is one of the IRS documents associated with pay. His particular form indicated that he worked for the U.S. Department of Naval Intelligence. They informed me that it was a genuine document. It was not something that had been fabricated.
What were the size of these seats that were in there?
The seats were very small. I'd say about 1/3 to 1/4 the size of a normal human seat. A lot of people say, boy, it must have been exciting to go in there, and I always say it wasn't. It was a very ominous feeling. I know it sounds silly, but it's so unearthly in there.
You have spoken to someone who's actually seen a UFO under a tarpaulin at Area 51.
I have. I've spoken to several people who've seen UFOs or disc-shaped craft out there. There was a woman who was a secretary for a major defense contractor at the Nevada test site who'd worked on nuclear programs, who told me that she had sat in on conversations between military and civilian contractors at which the Roswell case had been discussed, at which it had been discussed taking some Roswell material to Area 51. The level of secrecy during those meetings was great. Afterward, they'd take the ribbons out of the typewriters she was typing on. She was ready to tell me about this, and I had this conversation with her on the phone. The next day after this conversation takes place, she's visited by two men who say that they work for the company she used to work for, reminding her that she is still under a security oath, told her, we know that you do a lot of traveling back and forth, a lot of long drives between Las Vegas and LA. We'd hate for something to happen to you or your family. No interview. I mean, it happened again and again and again. Same scenario.
Lazar says that in addition to being shown inside